Fantastic. Okay, good morning. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. We're proud to welcome Ed Benks, the Director of Sales for O'Brien, as well as Lisa Snyder, CEO of Alamance Farmers Mutual Insurance in North Carolina, to talk to us about the business continuity and business interruption concern that we're all seeing across this new environment COVID introduced earlier this spring, and how we're all reacting. We're going to be going through this through a webinar, and then we'll be resuming at the end with a Q&A session to discuss the topics presented today. So thank you very much for joining. Thank you, Lisa and Ed, for being here, and we will be we'll get started.
Well, thank you for joining us. My name is Ed Benks, Director of Sales over at OBRIEN Insurance Solutions. And to get started, why do we need business continuity planning, and why is it so mission critical? Especially right now with everything that's happened with the COVID-19, there's a lot of insurers, a lot of vendors and partners that are taking actions and reflecting on where they're at. A lot of business continuity planning elements have been implemented. A lot of them successfully, some not so successfully. So really, what we're chatting about here today is how do you develop a framework to have a successful business continuity plan. No one could have predicted exactly what we're going through with the COVID-19, the layers that everyone has had to deal with, and at a very breakneck pace. But we do know that something will go wrong at some point. And those are all the different elements that we put together with our disaster recovery plans, with our business continuity plans. People will get sick, software fails, code breaks, power goes out, data lines get cut, and natural disasters will occur. And over the last couple of years, with more frequency. So what we're doing is we're preparing for the worst, we're identifying what can happen, and we're hoping for the best. The idea is that we're minimizing the impact on all the different elements of the organization, of our supply chain, and all the services that we provide and the vendors that we work with. We're protecting our corporate reputation, and we want to return to normal as quickly as possible. The roadmap that we've used to identify and develop our plan comes in 4 phases. Number 1 is understanding where all our vulnerabilities may lie. What are the potential losses, and how do we manage any issues that we have, again, to return to normal as quickly as possible with as few interruptions as possible. And that starts with the analysis phase. What are all the different business impacts that can happen? What are all the different things that could go wrong from an operations perspective, from an infrastructure perspective, and with our customers and our vendors, and also, just as importantly, employee impacts. A lot of companies have shifted very quickly to working remotely, and we've seen a lot of success stories there, and some struggles. In creating a plan, you've got all the teams that you're working with. So you're identifying all the different, from a higher level, all the different teams, all the individuals that need to be involved in the process of the identification and the analysis. There's the executive team that can oversee this. You've got underwriting, claims, IT, all the different vendors that you're working with. There are all the teams that are going to work individually to identify in their vertical what are the potential issues that we can have, and the measures of preparedness that you're going to take with the rest of the staff. Right? This involves training employees, working with your agents, working with your vendors on all the different elements that you've identified, and making sure that they understand what is the chain of command, what needs to happen if any type of unforeseen event occurs. From there, we constantly review and adjust. From our end, we do it on a quarterly basis where we review our plan. Have there been any changes in staff? Are there any new elements that we need to be aware of and prepare for? From here, I'll pass it on to Lisa, who who will go over what Alamance has done using these elements to prepare for any unforeseen events.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Snyder with Alamance Farmers Mutual Insurance Company, and very glad to be here today with you to discuss business continuity. Ed just laid out the roadmap for planning for your business continuity, and now that you have this roadmap, where do you begin? As Ed mentioned, the first thing that you need to do is you need to identify those risks that pertain to your company. At Alamance, what we did was we actually involved our employees and our board of directors and the executive team, and we sat down around the table and just brainstormed about all the potential risks that we could think of. And what you see here on the screen are several of those risks. We actually had, I think, a total of 53 total that we came up with, and of course that list would have been too small for you to view, so I've pared it down here. And also, which division in the company is going to be responsible for the mitigation of this risk. So once you've identified your risk, now it's time to move to the analysis phase. What you see here on the screen is what's known as a risk matrix. And as you move from left to right is how likely is this event to happen. That upper left quadrant, less likely, the upper right quadrant, more likely. And as you move down into the lower quadrants, what impact are these risks going to have on your company? Are they going to have a higher impact? Are they going to have a lower impact? And so you need to take all of those risks that you've just identified and determine where they fall in the risk matrix. Within each of those 4 quadrants, you also have 3 sections. What is the time sensitivity of this risk? If this risk were to occur, would it be an immediate threat to your company? Would the threat be realized in the short term, or would it be realized in the long term? So you're going to take those risks and assign a risk score based upon those quadrants. And so what you see is we have done that with each of those different risks that we have identified. And now that you have a risk score, you can start laying those into your risk matrix. Now what you see is the same risk matrix, but with each of those risks numbered, where do they fall within the risk matrix? Then you can start to prioritize those risks. And you, of course, are going to want to start with quadrant D, those risks that are more likely to occur and will have a higher impact for your company. So we've laid these out and we've prioritized them. As you can see, the greatest risks that we feel that we will face that are more likely and will have a larger impact are our customer files compromised, so your cybersecurity. Living here in an Atlantic coast state, hurricanes are always a threat to us, and so that is another risk that fell in that lower quadrant, as well as rate adequacy. And that is a risk that is more likely to occur, would have a higher impact, but you wouldn't realize it in the short term or the immediate area. It would actually be realized over the long term. Then once you have all of those risks prioritized, you can start creating your plan. Which ones are you going to address first? As we said, you've got them prioritized, and you create your plan. And I'll just give an example for the hurricane. For us, we realized that we really needed to have everyone able to work remotely. If our building were ever knocked out, those employees would need to be able to take their computers with them. Everyone has a laptop. We began utilizing a lot of vendors who are cloud-based that we can access through the web. They're geographically diversified. We don't have everybody that we are using located here in the Triangle area of North Carolina. And then, of course, the last piece of the roadmap is you need to measure. You know, you've got this plan now that you've mapped out. How well is it going to work? And how we tested was we had everyone work from home for a couple of days to ensure that they were going to be able to function in their roles and things could be seamless. We started planning for this years ago, and never in a million years would we have guessed that we were going to have a pandemic. That actually was on our list, but it was a pandemic affecting the staff, not the entire country or policyholders and things like that. And so our business continuity plan was actually put into practice. We had stay-at-home orders here issued in North Carolina, and while insurance is considered an essential service and we would not have had to stay at home, we felt that it was in the best interest of our staff to have them working remotely, at least in the short time. And so our business continuity plan was very successful. And with that, Ed, I'll pass it back over to you.
Thank you. Oh, and those are great examples of preparing, and knowing that there could be a pandemic, knowing that there could be an issue that affects the staff, even not knowing the severity of it. Being prepared, allowed Alamance to shift very quickly and adjust and continue, operations as usual. So with all that in mind, where do you start? And there's four elements of this that we've identified, and that is the staff, infrastructure, technology, and vendors partners that we work with. Right, on the staff side, the employees that obviously are internal, agents for an insurance company, and any contractors that we work with. On the infrastructure level, the office, the actual physical office building that that you're in, or any additional second locations that you may have, the building, the contents, the workstations, and the actual physical infrastructure. From a technology standpoint, your IT, your data centers, backups for your data centers, and connectivity. From our end, we have we work on a hardline data. But if the lines get cut, we also have satellite available as a backup, so we can flip a switch and continue working. And from a vendor partner perspective, we vet anyone that we may be working with to know what is their business continuity planning. How well are they prepared for any interruptions? From a staff perspective, I think that one of the biggest things that we do is the cross training. Right. So if an individual, pandemic related, any type of situation, if an individual is going to be out for any extended period of time, we have folks who are cross trained, so someone else can take over for them. The remote work capabilities, obviously, we've talked about that, and a clear path of communication. Every single employee understands that in the, if some type of unforeseen event occurs, there's a clear path of communication, so everyone knows who they need to contact and how they need to go about their their daily business with any type of interruption. And one other note with the staff is, a lot of insurance companies and ourselves, you have individuals that work there that have a lot of institutional knowledge. So that cross training is extremely important, right? We all have that individual at the office that just quote unquote knows where everything is, right? And it's extremely important to make sure that in any type of event that there's someone else that can step in at a moment's notice and be able to to operate and keep the business running and keep certain functions running. From an infrastructure, you obviously have your physical office, the building that you're working from, all the the workstations and office equipment. Lisa mentioned they're prepared. Everyone has laptops, right? So if they can't come in, they have their workstations with them, and they can work from anywhere. Your policyholder communications. How are you going to work with and communicate with your customers as well as your vendors? On the technology side, if you're working with the legacy system, how well is it backed up, and how prepared are you to handle any downtime that may occur with that system? You know, on-site and off-site data centers are hugely important, so that you can access, if one goes down, can you still access all of your data, all of your customer information from another center? And the connectivity, we mentioned the hard line and having a backup satellite, so that you can maintain connectivity with all of your staff, vendors, agents, anyone that you need to communicate with. And again, with the vendors, you know, requesting a copy of their business continuity planning. How well are vendors that you rely on prepared? Because you may have a backup plan. You might have everything in place, but if your vendors are unable to service your account or provide you with the information, data, any type of anything you may need, how well are they prepared, and how well are you prepared to move on with or without that vendor? Having all this written down, you know, a written plan, right? So we have hard copies that we maintain off-site. So there's multiple copies. Every stakeholder has, you know, maintains one off-site at their home. We review and we test on a quarterly basis. So we go through, we play out some scenarios. If anything has changed, which, you know, now is really a great time, now that everything, you know, everyone has been operating through the coronavirus. Now is a great time to sit down, review, and see what, if any, changes need to be made to your business continuity. Some elements of our plan, Lisa mentioned how they went through and prioritized. We identified 5 levels that we maintain business continuity for. Number 1 is at the staffing level. All employees are cross-trained in multiple disciplines. So if someone's out, someone else can step in for them. At the machine level, because we are a printer, we have, if a machine goes down, we have redundancy at every level of production. So if one piece of machinery goes down, all that work can get shifted to, you know, to another identical machine. We intentionally do not run at 100% on any of our on any of the machines that we have, any of the presses or inserters that we have in our office. So if work needs to be moved, it can be done, and we can maintain all of our SLAs and still continue to get all the work, you know, out the door, and all the policyholder communications are delivered without any delay. From a power level, if the power goes out, we have a generator on site, and when, you know, we do test that, and a lot of times when we test it, the staff that's working in the back office doesn't even know something occurred. We're able to flip a switch if the power goes out and continue running, and most of the staff don't even notice the difference. Data services, we have both hardline and satellite redundancy. And at a catastrophic level, if we are unable to produce at our facility, we have a partner facility with an identical footprint as ours, and they maintain stock. We test with them on a quarterly basis. We can flip a switch and they will start producing for us. So in the event that we cannot do anything at our facility, again, we're up and running at a partner facility, and our SLAs continue to be met. Just some final thoughts. Again, no one could have predicted the severity of what we've gone through with the coronavirus and how that's affected everyone at every level of business and personal. But we do know that something at some point will happen, right? With natural disasters, software failures, power going out, data lines getting cut, and maintaining a strong business continuity plan is absolutely mission critical. Hopefully this has been some help for you. We'll open up to some questions, and again, we appreciate your time.
I see there's a question for me, and that is, how many people and from what departments were involved in determining the highest priorities, and how were the decision makers chosen? We are a very large company. We have a total of 14 employees. And so the executive team and the division management team were actually the ones who were chosen to get together and to make the decisions as to how this plan was going to be executed. Each of those department managers went back to their employees and discussed it, because of course they are also very involved in ensuring that the plan goes off without a hitch. And so that was the way that we did it here at Alamance.
I see another question has popped up on how COVID has affected your staff's ability to physically access and work from the office. We are an essential service because we work with the U.S. Postal Service and we deliver policyholder communications, everything from cancellations, billing statements, policy decks, everything. So we have maintained our schedule. The production staff, what we've done is we've spread out the shifts so that we have the least amount of people possible to do the work that needs to get done in the office. Those of us that can work remotely have shifted to working remotely, and from the perspective of maintaining a clean environment, we've increased our cleaning, our equipment, and anything that anyone comes in contact with gets cleaned and sanitized multiple times a day. I see another question here, the written down portion. Making the work to plan actionable. How is it not just written down, but made actionable across the organization? And I can take that. Maybe Lisa can chime in on that as well. Maintaining, we have everything written down. We've got a physical business continuity plan, and folks keep that at their home once per quarter. We sit down, we walk through every element of the plan, and underline, is there anything that needs to be changed? And most importantly, communicate with every member of the staff. So we have the stakeholders that have a copy of the plan and they're intimately involved in developing it. But then we also work with the staff and train the staff on all the different elements, so that everyone from the CEO to someone who's working on an inserter in the back of the room understands what steps they'll need to take if any type of unforeseen event does occur.
Ed, I think there was a question that was missed, and it was, how have your future long-term business continuity plans changed since COVID-19, and what have you learned? I'll say for ourselves, what we learned is that even though we have people working remotely, we had a couple of areas where the remote work was not going to work for us. We did not have a separate check printer and a remote desktop capture for deposits. We only had one of those, and so since that time we have decided that we need to get a separate check printer as well as a separate remote desktop processor for those deposits, and put that in the home of the individual who actually processes the checks and mails them. What we did to take care of that, in the short term, when everyone was working from home, one person would come to the office every day and perform that function. But that was definitely something that we didn't anticipate, and we have learned that we need to make some adjustments.
And from our perspective, really, very little has changed other than, shifting some of our staff around to maintain, again, as few people as possible in the back office, and still be able to meet all of our SLAs. So we've spread some shifts out. And then from a cleanliness perspective, because our folks come in contact, we share, folks work on different presses, and paper moves around. So there's several touch points in the back, as we've increased, how often we are cleaning and sanitizing to maintain a healthy and a workable environment. Let's see, the next question, without naming names, which is fair. When you look at your vendors, how is the view in terms of their preparation to meet your needs, and how hard was that effort?
I don't know about you, Ed, but I think it's pretty safe to say that many of our vendors really don't have a written business continuity plan. I know that some of the vendors, we have actually moved from certain vendors to other vendors, And one of the things that was taken into account was the ability of that vendor to continue operations and to ensure that we were able to continue our operations in the event of a business interruption. What's been your experience? I know that you said that you have that requirement for your vendors, Ed.
We do, and you know, we have limited the access to our facilities. We don't have a lot of daily visitors, but we do have techs that come in and work on our presses and the different machines that we have here. And we've limited where, you know, there used to be multiple techs that would come in, you know, at the same time. We've limited that to one, so we have the least amount of exposure coming into the office. From our vendor perspectives, we've always worked with multiple suppliers, and we've talked to them, and you know, if there's one vendor that cannot supply us with what we need for whatever reason, we have a secondary vendor that we can turn to there. So we've been maybe fortunate in that experience that it's been managed well on our perspective, as well as from the different vendors and contractors that we work with. I see the next question. What is the best advice you have to someone going through a business continuity exercise for the first time?
I know the advice that I would give is Ed actually gave that roadmap that talks about the process that you need to go through when you're planning for business continuity. I would sit down and I would take a look at that roadmap and follow those steps. That risk matrix that we used was really good for not just identifying the risk, but actually visualizing which ones we really needed to focus on first and foremost. I know that was the process that really worked best for us. I'm sure there are many other ways that you could go about doing this, but Ed, what's your advice?
From our perspective, you know, we've had ours in place for years now, but I think, you know, what's most important is that you get something in place. When you're going through the exercise for the first time, you may miss something, and that would be natural, but work to identify as best you can all the different areas. Involve all of the stakeholders. So involve an individual from every different department, so that you have a voice from, on the insurance side, from the claims team, from the underwriting team, from your vendor management team, from the facilities team, so that the more stakeholders you involve initially, the better roadmap, the stronger roadmap you're going to have. And once you have it in place, you at least know that you have a business continuity plan and it's workable. From there, the review and working with peers. I think it's a great idea to talk to your peers, you know, in the insurance world, and see what they're willing to share and experiences that they've had, to ensure that you're covering as many bases as possible.
Great.
I think that may be it for the questions for now.
I think that may be it. I don't think I've seen any more questions come in the last couple of minutes. So I'd like to take this time and thank you very much, Ed and Lisa, for joining us. And thank you to the attendees that have joined us this morning. We will have this recording available online. I would encourage everybody to follow up with all of our participants, with Lisa and Alamance, to find out more about her experience, as well as with Ed to engage O'Brien to see how they can help you with your continuity planning. Certainly from AAIS's perspective, this is very resonant with all the work that we've been doing ourselves, as well as the experiences of all of our members. So this is very helpful and certainly timely with what we're doing. So thank you very much for joining, and have a wonderful day.